And you're dealing with a lot of high value pieces, there's a lot of money involved. Does the pressure ever get to you? Can you do something wrong?
You can do something wrong, absolutely. We like to prep as much as possible to know where to look, what's going to happen, but you can never know what's going to happen.
Can you tell us about some of the challenges you may have faced to get to where you are?
Well, to be honest, when I first sort of said that I was going to be a wildlife filmmaker, everybody thought I'd gone a little bit mad because, you know, to be honest, even now in India, unless you're a doctor, an engineer, or, you know, a lawyer, at least a professor, you're pretty much considered doomed.
Hello and welcome to Connected. I'm Divya Gopalan. Have you heard of the Taiwanese American auctioneer who recently sold the world's largest Stegosaurus fossil ever discovered for almost $45 million? Or how about the wildlife filmmaker who is India's first and only woman to win a Green Oscar in a global category? Her latest $4,000 documentary is up against a Robert Redford funded production at one of the world's top wildlife film festivals. Now, today we hear from both of these women who have defied expectations and gone against the grain, breaking into their respective fields. Phyllis Kao is a Taiwanese American auctioneer based in New York, working at one of the top auction houses in the world, Sotheby's. The videos of her auctions have received millions of views on social media. Our reporter Izzy Wells sat down with her in Taipei and asked her about her most exciting and memorable auction story.
I suppose the obvious answer is is the dinosaur fossil that I sold recently in July 2024, the largest Stegosaurus fossil we have yet to discover.
And that went for a whopping $44.6 million.
It did. US dollars.
Yeah. And the New York Times wrote an article about you selling this piece, and they described kind of your stance and your eye contact and how you're keeping the momentum going during this very exciting, tense bid. Can you tell us a little bit more about the body language you use and that element of performance when you're in an auction?
When I was a teenager, I was dead set on becoming a solo violinist, and you know, by the time I was 17, I think I was on stage every 2 weeks. By the time I was 18, I'd performed at Carnegie Hall twice, actually, I know. But as some classical violinists do, I kind of burnt out and decided to go to a regular school instead of conservatory, I mean. But I had that performing arts background, and when I started working in the auction world, back in the day, it was a physical book, you know, not the auctioneer's book. It wasn't, you know, the iPad or like, you know, the digital surface that we're using. So I looked at the auctioneer's book just as the auctioneer did. I saw everything that he or she was seeing. And so I really learned how to be an auctioneer just by watching, just by looking at the auctioneer's book and looking at all of the action. So about a year of clerking, a year in, the owner of the auction house said, "Phyllis, do you want to go give it a try?" And I was so young, I think I was too stupid to be scared, honestly. Just, you know, fearless. And I thought to myself, well, nothing basically could be harder than playing a concerto on stage.
From when you first started out to now, has anything changed in the way that you kind of command the room, or, you know, back to the performance element? What are the things that you really like have in mind, or you think you've learned over those years? That's fun to think about how I've changed. In the beginning, it was quite. I guess I had my own natural style, but by the time I got to Sotheby's has a very rigorous training and audition process, specifically for being an auctioneer. So they do have certain guidelines that you learn and you sell by, and they really. They helped develop my technique, actually, and I learned some tricks of the trade that I hadn't been taught before. And you know, I've been in the industry and I've been selling for 15 odd years now, so of course I've aged. My style has matured. You know, I'm not as scared of being assertive. You know, when you're a 20-something-year-old woman, it is a challenge to be assertive in front of a room of strangers and to try to control that chaos. let's go back to Apex, and it exceeded its pre-sale estimate by over 11 times. And we're talking about this very intense bid going back and forth. How do you go about managing the room and keeping that bidding going? What role do you have there?
I knew going in that it was going to be a milestone and an honor. I didn't realize to what extent. I don't think anyone could have predicted. But I knew that there were several important players that would take it pretty far. Again, I didn't realize how far, but I knew which colleagues to look to, of course, which colleagues in the room were talking to the serious bidders. We always try to have that knowledge beforehand, where to look in the room, who has what bid, you know. But the pace and the rhythm of those bidders, you can never predict that, no matter how well you know a person or how well you think you know a colleague. So it was really, it's always a push and pull of keeping the tension there, but not putting too much pressure on someone, and keeping everyone entertained at the same time.
And what else would you say it takes to be the top of your game in this field?
Confidence, nerves of steel, getting a feeling for the timing. In fact, you always have time. You know, that's something that I think we always learn in every field. As long as you have a good technical foundation, you can massage things. You know, you can get through with some style.
And you're dealing with a lot of high value pieces. There's a lot of money involved. Does the pressure ever get to you? And what are the risks at stake? Can you do something wrong?
You can do something wrong, absolutely. Like I said, we like to prep as much as possible to know where to look, what's going to happen, but you can never know what's going to happen. You know, we have these set bidding increments, these guidelines that everyone knows, but when you're getting into the millions, the 2 millions, the, you know, beyond 20 million, how much the bidder will want to bid, especially if we're way out of estimate range, that's always a surprise, and you have to go with the flow. Again, applying just enough pressure and controlling what you can, but also letting things flow, letting people feel comfortable bidding.
So with this element of performance, and there are risks at stake, before you step out onto the podium, do you have any pre-auction rituals or superstitions?
Yes, yes. Some people have compared me to a baseball player with my superstitions. Well, for preparation, I always want to know what I'm selling. I want to know as much as I can. You know, I can talk to you about Apex until you're so bored, until you're tearing up from boredom. But I want to know about everything that I'm selling. I want to know the importance. I want to know the gravitas of the situation before it happens, obviously. And I want to know how important it is to the seller, to the consignor. You know, this can really be a personal milestone event, and it can be really emotional sometimes. So you have to respect that, and you have to learn all of that.
Let's bring it back a little bit to a wider picture. So auctioneers at the top auction houses have traditionally been white British males, but you're a Taiwanese American woman. What has it been like working in this industry, and is the gender balance changing?
The gender balance is changing. Sotheby's New York, I know in 2023, we had parity, which 10 years ago was not the case. And I think 10 or 15 years ago, you never would have thought you'd see me, someone who looks like me with my background, taking an evening sale in New York, you know, a marquee evening sale, taking a sale for an historical object, an historical specimen like Apex for 44.6 million. I don't think 10 years ago this would have been the case.
And let's talk a little bit about some other changes that are going on in this business. So post-COVID, Sotheby's has changed the process a little bit in the way that they're selling art and the auctions post-pandemic. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
During the beginning of the pandemic, really, you realized, oh, no one can come into the building. Therefore, no one can actually come into the auction room and watch a live auction. We already were live streaming on our own website, but we hadn't really started live streaming in these big produced ways, our marquee sales. And now we have, it's basically a live TV show, which is frightening. But we have, you know, now going into a marquee sale, I've got my tech rehearsal. I meet, you know, my new audio and camera crew for the evening sales. There's hair and makeup. I do my own hair, but there's still makeup. And it's this big production, you know. You learn how to read a teleprompter. You learn how to speak into the camera and sell to the camera. And like I said, I'm kind of this transition generation who's seen old school book, pen and paper, and the digital platform age. If you'll notice, I am right-handed, but I always sell with my left hand. The gavel's always in my left, because I was trained to hold a pen in my right, so I could record the buyer and the bid amount.
That was very interesting.
So I can't switch, you know.
Filming the auctions, I guess it's also making it more accessible. And at the same time, Sotheby's has amassed quite the following on TikTok after it started sharing some of its auctions on the platform. Is it trying to attract more Gen Z buyers? And why do you think people are liking to watch this content on the platform?
We are aiming to attract younger bidders. You know, the next generation is everyone's future, right? So you've got to learn what they want, and you have to appeal to them. I think it was just a natural transition for marketing. I'm delighted that Gen Z is interested in auctions, and I think they probably wouldn't have seen Apex selling had it not been for our TikTok videos and our presence on social media.
Now let's talk about the art collectors scene here in Taiwan. How important is Taiwan as an art market for Sotheby's?
Taiwan is massively important. It's kind of like the best kept secret, except, you know, for the art industry, it's not a secret at all. Taiwan is so important. There are many, many auction records that have been made by Taiwanese collectors who live in Taiwan in so many categories: contemporary art, impressionists, whiskey, wine, jewels, you name it. Yeah. Taiwan is a very, very strong, healthy, sophisticated, and storied art collecting and rare objects collecting community. When you look at our traveling exhibition schedule for our New York marquee sales and our top lots, the traveling exhibition schedule is London, Paris, Hong Kong, where we all have, you know, our brick and mortar houses. And then after Hong Kong, it's Taipei. And then we come home to New York. You know, Taipei is that important. We'll make a special stop. So many people are surprised, even Taiwanese people are surprised, because Taiwanese collectors are so low-key. We say 低调, right? They're so low-key. Even, you know, your neighbor might be this really important collector, but Taiwanese are so low-key in collecting. It is the best kept secret.
And what are some of the collecting habits and trends that you've observed from the collectors here in Taiwan? What are they into?
Yeah, it's a great topic, and I like to think about it because, like we said earlier, you know, the future is our future. The next generation is our future, so we want to get into their heads and find out what they want. Like I said, the Taiwanese collecting community is so sophisticated and mature and really seasoned, actually. So the older generations tended to collect more classical Chinese art, antiquities, Chinese, you know, ancient Chinese objects. And we're finding that the next generation, the 第二代, they're you know, they're interested in that, sure, and that is the base of their collecting experience. Probably they've grown up with it, they've seen what it is to be a connoisseur, but a lot of the second generation is branching out and trying to find their own path in collecting, and they're going into modern and contemporary, or, you know, or impressionist, or what have you. It's diversifying in the second generation, and that's really exciting.
That is exciting. And do you have any predictions for what people are going to be, the next generation are going to be into?
One thing that I've noticed is people are getting more and more interested in cross-category collecting. You know, it's not just focusing and being a connoisseur in one niche area. You might have an eclectic collection, an eclectic atmosphere at home, where you'll have the Monet on the wall next to your Song Dynasty ceramic, next to your Georgian table. You know, it's becoming more varied. Culturally, we're all becoming so globalized and meshing and having access and learning about other cultures. It would follow that our collecting habits follow suit. Sold.
That was Izzy Wells speaking with Phyllis Kao, auctioneer and vice president of client strategy at Sotheby's. Now, Ashwika Kapur is India's only woman to win a Green Oscar in a global category, and she's also the youngest winner. Her latest film, Catapults to Cameras, takes on illegal wildlife hunting in West Bengal and has been nominated for the Jackson Wild Media Awards. That's the US's biggest nature film awards. It is among the highest honors in the field of nature and wildlife filmmaking. She's up against much larger productions, including the documentary Watershed, which has been funded by the Redford Center. We asked her why a hunting festival in Bengal drove her to make a documentary.
The scale and the cruelty of it was far greater than anything I could have ever imagined. This was not a hunt for money. This was not a hunt for food. This was entirely a blood sport that was driven by young men. And when I say young men, it is a recent phenomena that this sort of a hunt has become so big on this scale because of technology. So over the last few years, younger men in rural communities in Bengal essentially coordinate these hunts entirely on WhatsApp and smartphones. So what used to in the past be traditional hunts that used to take place in really small scale in their backyards has now turned into this mass sort of hunting sport, this blood sport that takes place across rural Bengal. And the moment you kind of understand the mindlessness of it is when you see what they are killing. They don't come out of forests killing big animals. They even come out of forests killing the tiniest birds in nests. So this is a blood sport, and over 100,000 men come together to sort of collect together and go 100 kilometers from home, enter forests and kill everything indiscriminately. But what was equally alarming to me, apart from the sort of the indiscriminate killing of wildlife, what was equally alarming to me was that children, boys as young as 7 and 8, were being taken along in these hunts to participate in this massacre. And I found that extremely difficult to see. So that is where this sort of story and this idea came about. And we decided to approach what was a really grim subject, a really difficult subject, with something that was equally powerful, which was hope. And that's why Catapults to Cameras sort of was born.
And one of the interesting approaches you took was the route of using children to tell the story and to see it through their eyes, which also means that the outcome could be entirely unpredictable. Can you tell us why you decided to take that risk and go that route?
So essentially, I wanted to find the root of the problem. So when I went to these hunting villages, I realized that the root of the problem was that children, from the time they were 2 or 3 years old, were given their first weapons, which was a catapult. And they were taught from childhood that all animals are targets. So they were taught that, anything that moves, anything that's sort of like a bird, an animal in your backyard, any wildlife was a target, and they would shoot with their catapults. And those children then go on to those bigger hunting festivals. So how could we have inspired them to look at wildlife a different way? Because if they've been taught one thing, these are just kids. They can be taught something else. So that's when the idea sort of came to me that what if, just as an experiment, we chose 5 boys from these hunting villages who are kind of on the cusp of going for those big hunts. They're at that coming of age cusp between the ages of 10 and 13 before they go for the big hunts. And what if we gave them cameras for a week? Would they change the way they view wildlife? And that experimental sort of pilot project is exactly what the documentary is about. So you're absolutely right when you say that we didn't know which direction this would take. And that was a risk that I was willing to take because I had a hunch that at the end of the day, what children need is the right influence.
You know, in our industry, Ash, they say avoid working with children and animals because they are so difficult to direct. And you've done exactly both with this documentary. Can you tell us the biggest challenge you faced and perhaps the most encouraging outcome from this?
The biggest challenge I would have faced is finding a partner for this documentary, because you'll be surprised that there's a lamentable lack of platforms globally that fund purely conservation content. But India, amazingly, has one platform that is entirely dedicated to conservation content. So I think the main thing for me was to partner up with a platform that highlighted conservation. And I found this platform called Round Glass Sustain, which has been launched by a individual philanthropist called Sunny Singh in the US. And the entire platform is dedicated to nature storytelling, to conservation storytelling. So to get a platform that was willing to take that risk with me and tell an authentic story and give hope a chance was both a challenge and turned out to be quite a blessing.
Now, at the time of this recording, this documentary has been nominated at the Jackson Wild Media Awards. That's the US's biggest nature film awards. Can you tell us the significance of this? Also, given that your budget, as far as documentaries go and nature documentaries go, wasn't very huge.
Yeah, so this budget was really, really small. Like it was very, very modest film that was made locally entirely by a local crew, a local story told in Bengal. And what's amazing is that it's currently in Jackson Wild been nominated in the Impact Campaign category, which itself is a very, very special category because it recognizes films that have gone beyond the screen to actually have a real world impact. And Catapults to Camera started as a film, started as a concept that was born in the field, and has now gone on to become an actual conservation project in Bengal, where every month boys of that same age group are trained in sort of wildlife photography, so they start seeing wildlife in a different way. And obviously, once you've seen the beauty of wildlife, they can't unsee it, and they don't hunt anymore.
Ash, I don't want to diminish from your achievements, but your accomplishments are extraordinary for any filmmaker, I would say, but also as an Indian woman, to be able to get past certain social boundaries or expectations from you. Can you tell us about some of the challenges you may have faced to get to where you are, or have you felt like you have received a lot of support from India itself?
Well, to be honest, when I first sort of said that I was going to be a wildlife filmmaker, everybody thought I'd gone a little bit mad because, to be honest, even now in India, unless you're a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer, at least a professor, you're pretty much considered doomed. So wildlife filmmaking wasn't exactly considered a real career option at all. And the most important thing that I think I had to do, where I had to find the strength, was to stick with it. It's more the sort of sticking with it through those dissenting voices and through those challenging times, and kind of like believing in what you do so that you can sort of prove yourself. But having said that, there has also been equal amounts of support from the larger industry as well. So the challenges have come with the good, and it's all about sticking with it and giving it your best, and most importantly, having fun, because I think magic happens when you enjoy what you do. Something magical happens, and it reflects on screen.
And speaking of what keeps you going, we talk about societal pressures and expectations, but at the end of the day, the ecology and the environment we're facing isn't too encouraging. Species are disappearing every single day. We're facing global warming, climate change. So what is it that keeps you going? What is it that gives you hope to carry on making your stories, putting your films out there?
I think, first of all, I have to say my career choice, as well as what I do, comes from a very simple and extremely powerful love for nature. So I feel a very strong moral responsibility towards the natural world. I have always been an enormous fan of animals, and that is my calling in life. I am the storyteller of the conservationists out there. And I've encountered thousands of people out there who are just working against the odds, working in every which corner of the world, giving it their absolute best every single day to look after their patch of the planet. They are doing what they do in their own backyard, looking after their part of the planet. And together, all those people come together to create the larger picture of conservation. And to me, that's what really drives me, to tell those stories about those people and those places across the world that give me so much hope, that even against so many odds, there are incredible people there every single day fighting to keep this planet safe. And as a storyteller, it's my responsibility and my calling in life to bring those stories to you.
That was Ashwika Kapur, filmmaker and science communicator, joining us from Bristol. We hope these stories of women making an impact have resonated with you as much as they did with us. Thank you so much for watching. It has been good to have your company. If you've enjoyed today's episode or have anything you'd like to add to the dialogue, do join the conversation on our social media. And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay connected.